Okay, thanks for coming back to segment 2 of the series, The Decline in Police Competence. This is the second and final segment in this two-part series. Now, in the first segment, we talked about the lack of skills cops have these days and how consistent practice can dramatically enhance those skills and prevent the fumbling issues when under high stress. We looked at the extraordinarily high rate of pistol malfunctions that happens when cops are in a shootout situation and why it happens and how to change that, or at least minimize it. We spoke of the habit of cops talking on the radio when they should instead have both hands on their gun and shooting. Okay, they want to talk and shoot. That doesn't work. And we discussed how tasers and OC sprays are designed to be used for unarmed, non-compliant subjects and not for persons armed with a deadly weapon, unless certain other safety measures have taken place. Which, that's a common occurrence these days. Cops going up against people armed with deadly weapons with nothing more than a taser. That's ridiculous. You got to stop that. And finally, we closed by examining the frightening and dangerous trend of mag dumping, emptying your magazine out, or shooting all 15 or 17 rounds in your suspect, which is just panic firing. What you're doing is panicking, and you're just pulling that trigger. That creates a major risk to the community. So join me now as we continue to examine the current trends, reactions, and responses being used by cops today. Some cops, not all cops, but a large portion of cops, that tend to endanger both the cops and the public unnecessarily. And let's attempt to correct or improve those things, okay? Because that's what this series is about. Identifying these things and in trying to correct it. Alright, let's look at this new phenomena. Shooting through your own damn windshield. What the hell is that? Okay, you're in a high-speed car chase through city streets, and so you decide to shoot through your windshield at the driver of the car you're chasing while you're chasing him. Are you a freaking stunad? What is wrong with you? So now you're deaf, okay? Because if you've ever shot a pistol inside of a car, you're going to go deaf. I can tell you that now. And also, now you have only one hand to safely drive your police car in that high-speed chase. And shooting through that windshield, you're taking a major risk of getting glass shards splashed back into your eyes. And on top of all this, should you actually hit the driver of that car that you're chasing and not another motorist or bystander, well, now you have a speeding 2-ton bullet that we call an automobile that is now totally and completely out of control. At least before you shot the driver, he had some sort of control over it. Well, now there's nothing. You've got a 2-ton bullet barreling down the highway. How smart is that? Congratulations, you just earned the Village Idiot Award. But the guy was shooting at me while I was chasing him. So back the fuck off and coordinate with other responding units. Now, could there ever be a time in which a cop would have no choice but to shoot through his own windshield? Well, of course, and it's happened a few times, but it is an extremely rare event, and it has generally happened as the cop sat in his car writing a ticket or was, otherwise ambushed in his car, not during car chases. All right. Now, let me cover this one very briefly, and I don't know, some people may not like this, but I call it the Tourniquet Craze. The only field treatment you'll ever see cops use for a stab wound or a GSW, gunshot wound, is always the same thing. Slap a tourniquet on it. Now, I don't pretend to have any special medical training, but what training I have had says that a tourniquet could actually worsen the situation very easily. Tourniquets cut off or severely restrict blood flow. It is this lack of blood flow that will cause tissue damage to everything below that tourniquet if it's done improperly, or if that tourniquet is not a professional grade tourniquet. You can't just take anything. Or if this tourniquet is left on for an extended amount of time. Tourniquets should only be used when an arterial bleed or heavy, serious bleeding cannot otherwise be stopped or controlled in any other way. Now, firm, direct pressure, and I do mean firm, hard pressure, right on top of the wound itself with a rag, a clean rag or cloth, is far better, and that should be tried first. Now, when that first cloth becomes blood-soaked, and it will, leave it right there. Leave it in place and put another clean cloth directly over that cloth and continue to firmly press on it. Now, check it after 10 or 15 minutes, and if heavy bleeding is still happening, well, then a tourniquet might be in order. In most cases, using a tourniquet should be your last option, not your first go-to option. Okay. I'm definitely going to have to light up for this one. And I'm going to try to make all of this just as short as possible because I hate doing long videos and you hate watching long videos. I do too. But this part is important. It is the most important part. And it happens to be my pet peeve and has been for a long, long time. This is probably the biggest failure of cops out of everything. And it's about handling non-compliant people. Now, speaking of how they handle situations in the streets, how they resolve conflicts, how they interact with these non-compliant people, their arrest decisions and procedures and so forth. And yet again, their current methods, and I saw some of this in my law enforcement days too, but it's gotten a lot worse. Their current methods of handling a lot of situations these days has resulted in injury or even death to the officers or others, or at the very least, it has greatly increased the chances of death or injury happening to the officers or the suspect himself or other people in the area. Now, here's the crux of the problem right here. For whatever reason, cops just absolutely fail to take control of the situation or the bad guy or the non-compliant guy. They would rather stand around and debate with him, try to coax him, plead and beg with him, or negotiate or something like that. Now, I know all of this looks good for the body camera view, and it's become the politically correct thing to do now, but in reality, this is inviting disaster. It does nothing but give the bad guy several advantages. All right? It gives him time to formulate a quick plan of attack or escape. It emboldens the bad guy because it gives him control of the situation, not you, him. It presents a weak image to the community, and most importantly, it increases the risk or the chances of injury to officers, family members, other members of the community, and the suspect himself. Now, I see this problem in about 95% of all police bad guy interactions on body cams, dash cams, badge cams, all that. It blows my mind. I cannot figure out why these cops do not take immediate control of the incident and the people involved. Are they scared? Because that's what scared looks like. Alright? This kind of reluctance of the cops to quickly control the event is exactly what turns that event from a minor event into a major or deadly event. And it has led to cops being killed or injured. It has turned into high-speed car chases that have eventually become fatalities, and it has led to family members or co-workers being assaulted and injured, and it has also led to the suspect being killed later. Much of that could have been avoided simply by cops taking immediate control of the incident instead of hesitating and pleading and negotiating or coaxing. Unedited, remember. Now, I watched a video with two cops that responded to a large house regarding a person that was walking around outside in the yard with a large knife threatening to kill people. Now, the cops drew down on him, and that's a good start. But as that maniac walked across his yard towards the cops, it was a big yard, with his knife in his hand and issuing verbal threats to them, guess what they did? Well, they had their guns drawn on them, but they didn't shoot at all. In fact, those two cops, and there were only two of them at the time, walked backwards all the way across the yard, all the way down a winding driveway, which I estimate was probably 200 feet in length at least, and onto an actual highway at the foot of that driveway. I was literally screaming. That maniac was able to run and stab one cop in the neck before the other cop finally decided to fire. I mean, who in the hell is training these cops anyways? I mean, do they get any training these days? Because it doesn't look like it to me. Now, I've lost count of how many videos I've seen just like this of the suspect or non-compliant guy not dropping his weapon, making the cops walk backwards for blocks and blocks. I see this practically on a daily basis in these videos. Just recently, San Diego cops spent 40 minutes trying to coax a driver to get out of his car. You can find that on video. It's called On Scene TV. On Scene, one word. On Scene TV. Got that video. There must have been 40 cops on that scene. All of them behind their cars and everything, with their guns drawn. Essentially treating it like a barricaded subject, you know. And this was following a car chase. Now, after a while, the driver did get out and walk between his car and the police units several times. Now, why they didn't rush and tackle him during that time, there's no weapons involved. Why they didn't rush and tackle him during that time, I can't figure out. And his car was drivable, and it was not blocked in at all, which is also another mystery to me as to why they didn't seal off any escape avenues. Now, that was a perfect opportunity if he decided to speed off and start a chase again, possibly this time resulting in a fatality. He did get back in his car for a while, followed by more begging from the cops, you know, with a tired old, "We just want to help you, bro. Let us help you, dude." Such horse shit. Well, finally, the guy gets out, but he begins to run away. Several cops give chase and tackle the guy. Now, this incident just happened to have a good ending, but what if it didn't? What if that guy decided to drive off and start a dangerous or deadly high-speed car chase? And he had that perfect opportunity to do it. He just decided not to. Why did it take 35 to 40 cops 40 minutes to resolve this simple issue? This issue could have and should have been handled effectively by 2 to 3 cops in the first 3 to 4 minutes of his refusal to get out of that car. And that's a stone cold fact. Now, I know that car stops following a pursuit are to be treated as felony car stops, but an approach of the car must happen eventually. So it's simple. Approach tactically with guns drawn. Break a window, spray in the OC, the pepper spray, he'll come out. Now, even non-ranking basic patrol officers can do this. It doesn't require a SWAT team. This was piss poor police work, and the sergeant in charge, I think, should have received a reprimand for it. Now, here's another one, and this is an interesting one. And this one wins the Police Clusterfuck Award hands down, and it hails from Sparks, Nevada. It involves a suspicious person, Joseph Williams. It involves a reckless high-speed chase twice, and one hell of a barrage of shots fired at the unarmed guy while he was sitting in his wrecked vehicle. Now, it started off as a suspicious person call. They tried to make a car stop. The guy hauled ass through city streets, blowing through stop signs and stoplights and so forth, the usual stuff. After several minutes of chasing, the guy unwittingly drove himself into a small area and boxed himself in by chain link fencing. The driver refuses to get out of his truck, and as usual, the cops want to negotiate and plead with him to comply. And this pleading and begging goes on for 4 or 5 minutes until the guy wants to play again. So, he starts his truck back up, he drops it down in drive, hits the gas, and he smashes through the chain link fence. And the cops can do nothing but tag along behind him again in their second car chase of the night with that guy in the single incident. This time the chase is even more dangerous than before because now he's driving without headlights, and he actually whipped a U-turn and started driving back toward the cops. He wasn't driving at them, but he was just driving in the opposite lane and going past them. It was that soft-handed approach by the cops that put all of them and the community at risk for a second time that night. Had they controlled the situation by forcing him out of the truck or possibly disabling the vehicle at that time, the second chase would have never happened. But anyway, that chase continues on for several more minutes. The entire video is 27 minutes long. Until finally somebody executes a pit maneuver and crashes the truck. Now, you can't really see much due to all the smoke and debris from the crash, and I don't know how many cops were present, but then you immediately hear a god-awful number of gunshots just explode, and those gunshots continue to explode. Honestly, I don't think I've ever heard that many gunshots in a single law enforcement shooting situation, even with multiple suspects involved. But you want to hear the comical thing about it? After that absolutely massive hail of police gunfire, that driver got out of his truck and surrendered. He was coherent, he was stable, he was alert, he was responsive because he was still cursing at the cops, and he refused medical treatment. I mean, these Barney Fife bastards can't even shoot. You know what I mean? Now, sometimes these negotiating and pleading tactics end well. Other times they don't. My point is that you, as a law enforcement officer, cannot take that kind of chance. Your job is to protect the community. You're failing at that when you let the bad guy control the situation, even for just a couple of minutes. Now, also, let's have an understanding here, please. I hear commentary all the time on videos like these where the host is, the host of these videos is always praising the cops for their de-escalation skills whenever the incident turns out positive and nobody gets hurt. Excellent de-escalation skills. Listen, incidents or encounters such as these do not call for de-escalation. They require stopping that person's actions immediately so as to prevent further dangerous actions. How do you de-escalate a situation where the driver refuses to get out of the car anyway? You can't. You can only stop his non-compliance and prevent possible danger by immediately and forcefully removing that driver from the car yourself. Once you do that, well, he can't start a high-speed chase or fish around and grab that pistol under the seat or formulate a plan of attack or escape and further endanger the community. Why would you try to de-escalate the situation of a dangerous person walking around downtown waving a gun or a machete instead of immediately stopping his dangerous actions? De-escalation is not what you do in situations like that. Stopping is what you do. And as I said, these situations do not call for de-escalation efforts because doing so greatly increases the potential for death or serious injury to innocent people. It requires immediate action by you to stop his behavior, a complete cessation of his behavior. And you don't do that by following him around and pleading with him for 30 minutes. Are you getting the picture now? All right. Let's talk about making an arrest real quick. We're almost done. Listen, fellas. Once you have decided to make an arrest, and you have a backup with you, if you think it's going to get hairy, well, then make the arrest. Okay? Don't wait, don't hesitate, don't argue, don't debate with him, don't explain it to his mommy first, and don't let him make a phone call or continue to talk on the phone. Just cuff the bastard. If he resists and puts up a fight, immediately put his dick in the dirt. Throw his ass flat on the ground. End of story. Stop letting these assholes walk you a mile down a highway or around the block 6 times, pleading with him by using the ever popular, "We don't want to hurt you, dude. Let us help you, bro." Please, you can dispense with the virtue signaling shit. If he's armed and doesn't stop, don't simply follow him around like an old scene from the Keystone Cops movies. Get in front of him. Force him to stop. I mean, does the word force scare you or something? Look, he's an active threat to you and the community. He has the present ability and opportunity to kill or seriously injure somebody. If he still refuses to comply, if he refuses to stop and drop the weapon, send him a fucking headache pill at 1,200 feet per second. You're justified at that point. This is neither the time nor the place to play social worker where you sit down and cry with him. What are you going to do? Follow him around all day begging for him to comply? What if he decides to randomly grab a bystander and put the knife to her neck? Because if he does that, it's only because you allowed it to happen. Your failure to take control of the incident has resulted in that hostage situation. Now listen very carefully, please. Mentally or emotionally disturbed people, EDP is what we call them, emotionally disturbed persons, they're even more dangerous than your ordinary armed suspect because they are totally unpredictable and they often do not have a full grasp on reality. That's what makes them so dangerous. The popular mindset of hesitating to use deadly force on an EDP out of sympathy can get you killed. Or even worse, it can get your partner killed. Do not let the fact that a suspect has mental issues factor into your decision to use deadly force. Treat it like any other deadly force incident. All right, let's talk about this thing where the driver refuses to get out of the car, and I think this is the last portion of it, because this seems to be a very common encounter these days. Not so much in my days. I mean, it happened, but nothing like it does today. 1 out of every 3 damn drivers wants to be an asshole and challenge cops on this. Listen, if you make a car stop and you order the driver or any passenger to get out of the car, do not stand there and argue or plead with them. Don't try to explain anything. You know, why stand there pointing your gun at the driver and yell, "Sir, please exit your vehicle"? Why stand there and do that for 20 minutes? Break a fucking window. Fill the car with pepper spray and literally drag his stupid ass out. Yes, you can do it. I've done it myself more than once. Look, courts have already ruled several times that all occupants must get out of a vehicle whenever requested to do so by a law enforcement officer, and that's for officer safety reasons. And many states have a law that also backs that up. So make the request twice. If he still doesn't immediately comply, then force compliance. Oops, there's that nasty word again. Force compliance. Capiche? Now, of course, you must act in accordance with your policies, with your agency's policy regarding this. But stop, don't let the tail wag the dog. Your job is to enforce the law and to protect people and property, not to negotiate and plead with non-compliant people. Like I said, these issues did exist when I was a cop, but it was kind of uncommon. Now, we took charge of every situation from the outset, and we maintained it. And people knew that we meant business, so we were very rarely challenged. We were challenged, but it wasn't real common. Not like today. And today it's exactly the opposite. Today it seems like it's the suspect or the bad guy that's in charge instead of the cops. The cops look and act like they're afraid to do anything, and badge cam videos tend to prove that. Cops are easily intimidated, they're confused, they're unable to render a decision in a crisis, they're unable to perform basic skills under pressure, they tend to fall apart under stress, and in general, they are completely unprepared for a high-stress event. Now, of course, I'm not saying this about all cops, but there is a large, very large portion of them that are like this. We must change this for the safety of our officers and for the safety of our communities. So in the end, I think it's very clear to see that effective policing has declined significantly over the last decade or two, and in doing so, it has left communities more vulnerable than ever before. It has increased the risk of injury or death to cops, and it has caused a sharp drop in the confidence level from the communities. Now, fellas, I realize this series heavily criticizes today's cops, but the goal is to realize the problems so that a solution can bring about change. All right? There are ways to correct these things. It can be done. You can become much more competent, much more effective, much more respected, and much safer, while at the same time protecting and serving your communities better. But it's got to start somewhere, and that's been the purpose of this 2-part series. So, listen, thanks for watching. I'm Antonius, and I'm just shooting it straight with you. Ciao.